All right, check. I think everything's good. What's up, everyone? Hope everyone's doing well. This is Abdurrahman Al Dahabi, your host for today, and we have today our special guest, Hamail. Thank you so much for coming and being here with us today.
It's a pleasure and thank you for having me.
So, guys, for the people who doesn't know Hamail, Hamail is an amazing makeup artist. She's been in this industry for so many years right now, and she's a person that have a lot of knowledge and research about makeup and its origin. So it was actually a huge honor for us to bring her with us here to the studio to talk more about the topic. And yeah, we have a very important topic to talk about that I think a lot of people really don't know and have no knowledge about it. And since you're a person who is very knowledgeable about it, which is the origin of makeup, a lot of people really don't know the history or the, let's say, the ingredients behind makeup, how makeup started, by who, the ingredients back then, what was they, and like after the ancient generation, like the modern generation, like how did it become, and all this stuff. So I will let you talk and tell us your own like experience about your own research that you have done throughout like the origin of makeup by who, and like the natural ingredients they used to have, and like what are the bad side effects that happen to these natural ingredients, and what are the great side effects, and what have happened towards this modern generation nowadays.
Okay, so makeup, like when we say makeup, we have a lot of different kinds of like categories we talk about combined in one spectrum. Makeup includes eyeliners, eyeshadows, blushes, lipsticks, base products. It's so many things that we kind of just characterize in one spectrum that is makeup. And each thing has its own origins. Um, and ironically, surprisingly actually, it has existed for a very long time to ancient civilizations. There's so many different things we can talk about. For example, did you know that eyeliner and kohl that we use today to extend and make our features look beautiful, it originated in Egypt.
That's actually interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, eyeliner and all these products, they originated in Egypt, and what's even more interesting is how they used to prepare it. In these days and age, we make it with safer ingredients. Back in the day, they would have coal. They would burn coal, and like they would put like a metal object on top of the burning coal, which will kind of leave this black residue, and they will scrape off that residue and mix it with a little oil, and that's how they created eyeliner.
That's really interesting. And by the way, I also heard, I googled it up and made some research about the Egyptian makeup. Is that they, first thing, not only women put makeup, also like the men and Egyptians and men put makeup, and they put it for beauty and also for protection. They protect their face or their skin from something.
Yes, that is true. At least that was the intended intention, really, to use those products. In ancient Egypt, makeup was not gender specific. It was more like a social status, kind of like oh, we are the wealthy ones, or we are the rich ones, or we are the powerful ones, and people would wear those specific products. Different forms of eyeliner signify different versions in Egyptian, history. Um, they mainly tried to depict the gods they followed back in the day, the pagan gods that they were obsessed with, really. And some of those gods, their depiction had these very long, crazy cat eyeliners. So both men and women, especially the pharaohs of Egypt, they would try and look more alike to the gods, because the concept really was that the pharaoh or the king at the time, or the queen, is a reincarnation or a kind of like an interpretation of the god. So they would change up their style of their eyeliner based on the style of the god they were representing, and that will be like an impact on all the population. That okay, for example, that this king or this pharaoh is the reincarnation of the god Horus. So what they would do in that area, they will turn the eyeliner a bit like round towards their eyes, because that's how they depicted the god. And again, this was something that was done by both men and women. all of the people in Egypt in that era also would indulge in eyeliners. Especially eyeliners were something that they were more obsessed with because it was something at the time considered a beauty standard more than the modern version of it. But for them, it was something very important. It was a part of their culture, it was a part of their trend, it was a part of a statement of power as well. So that's how and why they used it as like so much.
And I think like we can say like it's what mostly like you spoken about was mostly artistic than beautiful. You know, like their makeup type, the way they do it, like the cats and everything. It's really more art, you know, especially nowadays where like we people as students in the universities and colleges study the history of arts. We study about like the Egyptians and the pharaohs and stuff. A lot of their faces are very artistic, and one of the main reasons, like the main the thing that plays a huge role was is the makeup in them, you know, which makes them like really very unique. Because a lot of the ancient stuff, like other ancient empires and people, they don't really use that much of makeup or like that much of the unique technique of having this artistic form in their face, you know. So like we can still say or like also like mention that makeup is really an art more than a beauty standard, you know, like when someone puts makeup on his face or like when a guy puts makeup on a girl's face, it's mostly artistic, especially like when it comes to movies and theaters and stuff. They're actually putting them for the art of it, you know, like a person is getting beaten up, the girl is crying. It's all about makeup, you know, it's men and women.
That is true. Like I said in the beginning, that makeup has now become a stereotype that it's only used for beauty. But it is a form of art because you can't characterize everything in one definition. Yes, it can be used for beauty, but at the same time, it is also used to display art. There are people who it's a very famous influencer, James Charles, for example. He uses his makeup to do different kinds of art pieces on his face. Like he would take up a Picasso art piece and he would kind of recreate it on his face. And when you go to movies, you see special effects. You see, what is that? That is all makeup. The scars, the gore, they show it's all through the art of makeup. And makeup is not something easy. It is a very difficult thing to master. Not everyone is able to do it.
It's basically like you're painting on a person's face rather than painting on a canvas, you know, like the person's face is like the white canvas and like you're just painting on it. All right, Hamail, I want to ask you about the ingredients, more about the ingredients of the makeup, the eyeshadows. What did they use? Like, what would the Egyptians back then use for the eyeshadows, the lipsticks, the foundations, and all these stuff? Not even in Egyptians, like in the other ancient empires. Who are they, and like what would they use? What are the ingredients, and what are like the negative and positive side effects about these natural ingredients back then?
Okay, so this is a very, very interesting topic, and it might really disgust a few people. So, trigger warning. Back in the day, a very fun fact is that the Egyptians would crush beetle scales into a fine powder and use that as eyeshadow. That's where you get the iconic blue shadow in Egyptian art as well. It came from the scales of crushed blue beetles. And it did what it's supposed to do. It was a shimmering shadow, but at the same time, it was constructed with very unhygienic means. So obviously, it affected people very negatively. It gave people a lot of eye infections, for example. So those are some of the effects it had. Obviously, in today's time, we will never do that because it is very unsafe and very unhealthy. It can cause people to get pink eye. Some people might even lose their eyes if they do something of the kind. But back in the day, that's something they were using. Even the eyeliner method, it's very, very unhealthy because you're using burning coal to build an ingredient, which can obviously be very poisonous to your face. It can cause you to get sick. Another fun fact, really, and another tidbit I will say, in England, in the era of Queen Elizabeth I, the trend of being extremely white was very, very popular because the Queen herself, she would enjoy having that fair complexion. So she wanted to be more whiter than she was. And mind you, we're talking about people who are Caucasian raced, so they were very fair skinned as it is, but they wanted to be completely white like a wall white. So in order to attain that, they would use a poisonous substance called lead, and they would mix it into this kind of like paste and apply it on their face, on their bodies. And following in the steps of the queen, a lot of the noble women at the time, because the trend really went, whatever the queen did is what the women of the noble heritage would like to do because they could afford to do it. And so everyone was wearing these poisonous, they were basically poisoning themselves because lead is highly, highly, highly poisonous, and it is something that can kill you. And rumors are that that is what killed the queen eventually, because she would use a lot of it. Every single day she would go in public, she would use that lead paste on her face. And these are some of the examples of ingredients that back in the day was used in makeup. A lot of lead actually was one of the most popular ingredient up until the late 1800s to 1900s is what people used in makeup products. It was very poisonous and people didn't know. They would get sick from it, they would get burns from it. Some people can even get skin cancer from it. And that is again very unhealthy. And it's very, very dangerous. Not only unhealthy, it is very dangerous. It's not like it's causing you acne, it's causing you to die. So these are the kind of things people used in makeup back in the day. So, but at the same time, there's a difference where the Egyptians also used unhealthy ingredients. They would do that for representing art, to represent culture. But the British, they did that to represent beauty, to signify nobility, strength. So there you can also have an example of how makeup can be versatile and how it can be toxic or healthy.
I also heard something about the crushed flowers. They used to crush flowers for, I think, the eyeshadow or the lipstick. One of them. I don't remember.
Yes, that is true. Different means were used to obtain pigment because pigment was a very, very difficult thing to achieve. In different cultures, there were different methods of it. In China, they would use fruits like berries. They would crush berries and different kinds of fruits who had color, or even I forgot the vegetable as well. There's a vegetable that has a very red hue to it. They would use that, and they would use it to kind of obtain this kind of like pigment that they would apply on their cheeks, because back in ancient China, having red blush cheeks was a very, very big statement in fashion and beauty. In Egypt, they would use different kinds of flowers, mainly like roses or something very highly pigmented, and mix it with oil or other kinds of liquid and use it as lipstick. Or they would use it as blushes and even eyeshadows. So if they wanted to use a powdery substance, they would dry up the flowers and then they will like meld it into a fine powder and use it as an eyeshadow. But if they wanted to have a blush or a lipstick, they would mix it with some kind of liquid and use it as a lipstick or a blush. Like each area used a different kind of substance. Some of them used flowers, some used fruits, some used vegetables, some even used leaves. There are, in different areas in the world, you have different colored leaves. So like it was, that is actually still done today. Even in today's time, in today's modern era, makeup, a lot of the pigment we obtain from flowers, we obtain from fruits. Some of the scents which are in the natural makeup department, people use flowers and other scents to obtain the pigment, to obtain the scent. But then we also have chemicalized version of it.
It's really crazy. It's really crazy and interesting knowing that the makeup that we see nowadays, these ingredients, artificial ingredients and supplies, were actually very natural back then, you know, from fruits and vegetables and flowers and plants and all these kind of stuff, where like we actually see them in our daily lives. It used to be used as a way where it represents art or beauty, where we nowadays we call it as a makeup. It's really interesting. Speaking of flowers and lipsticks, I remember 4 years ago when I was in high school, our teacher told us about the traditional Syrian makeup in Syria, that the girls used to put like flour in their face as like the foundation back then, and they used to squeeze their cheeks to give this blush, and they used to bring this one kind of a flour where they put it in their lips in order to give it this, like, you know, the lipstick pigment, and like the mascara that you talked about, which is really, really, really interesting. You know, back then everything, like, speaking of the plants and the texture of them and the chemicals about them and all these natural ingredients that makes all these stuff back then, and which got implemented and upgraded into this generation, becoming mostly unfortunately artificial, It's really interesting knowing about it. I don't think anyone nowadays really knows a lot about makeup. They know like the natural, the nowadays ingredients. Like what I know and what happened. What I've seen in TikTok a couple of months ago, what I heard is that the makeup eyeshadow nowadays, the glittery one, is actually made out of the fish skin, the textured skin of the fish. And what I also heard is that some of them used to also be made out of a specific kind of crystal that they blend it so much in a powdered way where it doesn't affect the eyes negatively, And I also heard back then in Egypt, they used to protect their faces from makeup by using an oil. While nowadays, like, we use a primer. So, like, it's really interesting, and it's really an interesting topic to talk about nowadays, especially like as I said, like in the modern days, people barely know anything about the history of makeup, and I think that's why like there's a lot of stereotypes about makeup. People just like hear about from the media and like speak it out. The makeup is for girls, not for guys, whatsoever, and all this stuff. Or like they cannot see Tom Cruise and like Jeff Bezos and like all these actors and popular people that are from celebrities and business people and all this stuff. Before they come in an interview, they put makeup on their face, which is foundation. Before like the Joker, the actor of the Joker, when he comes, they put makeup on his face, which is not a shame. It's a piece of art. So it's really amazing and really interesting. Anyways, I think we had an amazing discussion, and it was really fun. I really want to thank you so much, Hamail, for your amazing research and amazing comments and amazing points that you pointed out that I think they are very, very, very important. And thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for being with us here today. It was an honor meeting with you. And yeah, you want to say anything?
No, I'm so glad you invited me here, and I'm so glad I got to share some of the information that I had, and I hope it's helpful to people. And I had a lot of fun. It was a very, really nice discussion, given that I'm obsessed with makeup.
It is actually, and I'm a guy and I'm obsessed with makeup. Like I love putting makeup on girls and stuff like this. It really reminds me of like peace, and it makes me relax. It reminds me of peace because there is a peace between me and the model that I'm putting makeup on. She trusts me that I'm gonna make her look good, and yeah. So right now, guys, we're at the end of the podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening, and I'll hope to see you soon. Ciao.